Since the start of Russia-Ukraine war, there has been a lot of accusations of who really started this war. A lot of Western countries has accused Russia President Putin of being the one who started the war, and a lot of neutral countries has also accused NATO countries of being the brain behind this war. There is this American economist who has thrown light on this particular issue. I want us to watch this video. I will be back.
Let me just explain in 2 minutes the Ukraine war. This is not an attack by Putin on Ukraine in the way that we are told every day. This started in 1990, February 9th, 1990. James Baker III, our Secretary of State, said to Mikhail Gorbachev, NATO will not move 1 inch eastward if you agree to German unification, basically ending World War II. And Gorbachev said, that's very important. Yes, NATO doesn't move, and we agreed to German unification. The US then cheated on this, already starting in 1994, when Clinton signed off on basically a plan to expand NATO all the way to Ukraine. This is when the so-called neocons took power, and Clinton was the first agent of this. And the expansion of NATO started in 1999 with Poland, Hungary, and Czech Republic. At that point, Russia didn't much care. There was no border other than with the Königsberg, but other than that, there was no direct threat. Then the US led the bombing of Serbia in 1999. That was bad, by the way, because that was a use of NATO to bomb a European capital, Belgrade, 78 straight days to break the country apart. The Russians didn't like that very much. But Putin became president, they swallowed it, they complained, but even Putin started out pro-European, pro-American, actually. He asked maybe we should join NATO when there was still the idea of some kind of mutually respectful relationship. Then 9/11 came, then came Afghanistan, and the Russians said, yeah, we'll support you, we understand, to root out terror. But then came 2 other decisive actions. In 2002, the United States unilaterally walked out of the anti-ballistic missile treaty. This was probably the most decisive event, never discussed in this context. But what it did was trigger the US putting in missile systems in Eastern Europe that Russia views as a dire, direct threat to national security by making possible a decapitation strike of missiles that are a few minutes away from Moscow. And we put in 2 Aegis missile systems. We say it's defense. Russia says, how do we know it's not Tomahawk nuclear-tipped missiles in your silos? You've told us. We have nothing to do with this. And so we walked out of the ABM treaty unilaterally in 2002. And then in 2003, we invaded Iraq on completely phony pretenses, as I've explained. In 2004-05, we engaged in a soft regime change operation in Ukraine, the so-called First Color Revolution. It put in office somebody that I knew and I was friends with, and am kind of distantly friends with President Yushchenko, because I was an advisor to the Ukrainian government in 1993, 94, 95. And then the US had its dirty hands in this. It should not meddle in other countries' elections. But in 2009, Yanukovych won the election, and he became president in 2010 on the basis of neutrality for Ukraine. That calmed things down because the US was pushing NATO, but the people of Ukraine on the opinion polls didn't even want to be in NATO. They knew that the country is divided between ethnic Ukrainian, ethnic Russian. What do we want with this? We want to stay away from your problems. So in February 22nd, 2014, the United States participated actively in the overthrow of Yanukovych. a typical U.S. regime change operation, have no doubt about it. And the Russians did us a favor. They intercepted a really ugly call between Victoria Nuland, my colleague at Columbia University now, and if you know her name and what she's done, have sympathy for me. Really. Between her and the U.S. ambassador to Ukraine, Jeffrey Sachs, who's a senior State Department official till today, and they talked about regime change. They said, who's going to be the next government? Why don't we pick this one? No, Klitschko shouldn't go in. It should be Yatsenyuk. Yes, it was Yatsenyuk, and we'll get the big guy, Biden, to come in and do an attaboy, they say, pat him on the back. It's great. So they made the new government, and I happened to be invited to go there soon after that, not knowing any of the background, and then some of it was in a very ugly way explained to me after I arrived, how the U.S. had participated in this. All of this is to say, the U.S. then said, okay, now NATO's really going to enlarge. And Putin kept saying, stop. You promised no NATO enlargement. It's been, by the way, I forgot to mention, in 2004, Estonia, Latvia, Lithuania, Bulgaria, Romania, Slovakia, Slovenia, 7 more countries in the not 1 inch eastward. And then, okay, it's a long story, but the U.S. kept rejecting the basic idea, don't expand NATO to Russia's border in a context where we're putting in goddamn missile systems after breaking a treaty. 2019, we walked out of the Intermediate Nuclear Force Treaty. In 2017, we walked out of the JCPOA, the treaty with Iran. This is the partner. This is the trust building. In other words, it's completely reckless U.S. foreign policy. On December 15, 2021, Putin put on the table a draft Russia-U.S. security agreement. You can find it online. The basis of it is no NATO enlargement. I called the White House that next week after that, begging them, take the negotiations. Putin's offered something, avoid this war. Oh, Jeff, there's not going to be a war. Announce that NATO's not going to enlarge. Oh, don't worry, NATO's not going to enlarge. I said, oh, you're going to have a war over something that's not going to happen? Why don't you announce them? And he said, no, our policy is an open door. This is Jake Sullivan. Our policy is an open door policy. Open door for NATO enlargement. That is under the category of bullshit, by the way. You don't have your right to put your military bases anywhere you want and expect peace in this world. You have to have some prudence. There's no such thing as an open door that we're going to be there and we're going to put our missile systems there and that's our right. There's no right to that. We declared in 1823, Europeans don't come to the Western Hemisphere. That's the Monroe Doctrine. The whole Western Hemisphere, after all. Okay, anyway, they turned down the negotiations. Then the special military operation started. And 5 days later, Zelensky says, okay, neutrality. And then the Turks said, we'll mediate this. And I flew to Ankara to discuss it with the Turkish negotiators because I wanted to hear exactly what was going on. So what was going on was they reached an agreement with a few odds and ends. And then the United States and Britain said, no way, you guys fight on. We got your back. We don't have your front, you're all gonna die. But we got your back as we kept pushing them into the front lines. That's 600,000 deaths now of Ukrainians since Boris Johnson flew to Kyiv to tell them to be brave. Absolutely ghastly. So when you think about your question, we have to understand we're not dealing with as we're told every day, with this madman like Hitler coming at us and violating this and violating that, and he's going to take over Europe. This is complete bogus, fake history that is a purely PR narrative of the U.S. government. And it doesn't stand up at all to anyone that knows anything. And if you try to say a word of this, I got completely cut out of the New York Times back in 2022 after writing my whole life columns for them. Oh, I'd send this, okay. And by the way, online, it's not even space. You know, there's no limit. They can publish 700 words. They would not publish, since then, 700 words for me about what I saw with my own eyes about what this war is about. They won't do it. We're playing games here. So, God forbid a nuclear power comes at us. I don't know what's going to happen. But we came at them.
You know, this world, many leaders who were supposed to be heroes has been turned into villains. And, you know, it's very sad how we have fallen for all these tricks for the entire time. You know, when Russia-Ukraine war started, we were all assuming that it was Vladimir Putin, who is a warmonger, who has gone to attack someone's country, someone who is an innocent. And we were all yearning for Ukraine to stand on their feet to defeat Russia. But later, we realized that it was not how it seems it is, because we have countries that has made it their job or made it their work to poke their nose into people's affairs, try to control everything on this planet, and they take extra miles to achieve this by orchestrating wars and later blame it on someone. We have seen some happens in our own continent, which is Libya, where Libya president was tagged as a dictator, a leader who don't respect his citizens, and they used that opportunity to eliminate him. And now they have been able to collapse the country called Libya. And after they collapse it, what are they doing? They are still up till now siphoning their oil and a whole lot of resources that was not being allowed by Gaddafi to happen in his country. And they keep on doing this, and the sad part is they control the narratives. They control the media, the Western media, who has big platforms and everybody watches and everybody listens. They control all this Western media, so they are able to change the narratives for it to suit them and for it to project them as they are the angels and the others as evils. This is what has been happening for ages. This is what has been happening for years. And we can see that happening in our backyard, in our countries. In Africa, many countries, leaders has been imposed or has been selected by these Western countries, and they have placed them as leaders, and they are using them to siphon in resources, to control, to implement policies that goes against the countries or that goes against the continent. But we think it's rather our leaders who are corrupt. It's rather our leaders, and we are always going to look down on our leaders and hail the Western country leaders. But somewhere along the line, somewhere between the line, is these people who are controlling the narratives, who are controlling our economies, who are controlling everything in our continent. These days, if you decided not to join IMF. They are going to make sure you have a very bad international review concerning your economy, and this is going to affect you through investing, international investors who want to come and invest in your country. Many things are happening that we didn't know. But now, a lot of people's eyes are opening. A lot of people are waking up, and we are beginning to understand what exactly is happening when it comes to international policies. Some weird policies has been imposed on many countries, and if you don't accept it, they will make sure they will use their media to brand you as an enemy of the world. And everybody is going to accept that, and they are going to use that opportunity to eliminate you. So many leaders are scared. Many leaders can't talk. Many leaders have no option than to follow the rules of the West. They impose systems that will never favor the indigenes in their country. This is something that is coming from the horse's own mouth. Mr. Jeffrey Sachs is not an ordinary man. He has been involved with their political analyst. He's an economist who has studied and has worked with the US government. So he knows what he's talking about. Why can't we let some issues slide? Because if it's going to cause a conflict in this world, why can't we let some issues slide? Why do we always have to poke our nose into people's affairs? Why do we always want to create conflict in places where there is no conflict? What are we gaining from it? I know most of them gain a lot. Most of them go to war just to siphon oils and siphon other resources. But is it the best way? There has not been peace in this world because of some greedy individuals that want to make themselves rich overnight. Please join my Telegram platform by going to the description box. Click on the link, the Telegram link. It will take you to my platform. Join us for us to discuss about the well-being of Africa and Africans in diaspora. If today is also your first time coming to this channel, then don't forget to subscribe to this channel and turn on the notification button so that anytime I upload any great content, you will be notified. Thanks for watching.